Welcome to the party. This is Dear Daughter from the BBC World Service with me, Namulanta Kombo.
So my friends got me good. I walked into what I thought was a chilled Saturday braai. Music was already pumping, amapiano, some guaito.
Today, the importance of celebration. We hear from a dad in South Africa about marking each moment of his children's lives, including those before they're born, with a male equivalent of a baby shower, which they call a NappyBraai.
When I arrived, everyone burst out laughing and handed me a massive adult-sized nappy. Before I could protest, the adult-sized diaper was strapped onto me like it was like some sort of sacred rite.
And beneath the laughs, we find out there is something spiritual to it, as he tells us how his generation of dads are trying to do things differently.
My father has never asked me how I am, and I love my father, but there are things that I think are necessary for children to feel seen, for children to feel heard.
But he says he's come to understand why things were the way they were. That racial segregation, the South African system of apartheid, which was in place until the early 1990s, affected whole families, and black dads especially, like his.
Part of the apartheid regime is that in all other instances, they weren't seen as men, they weren't seen as leaders, they weren't seen as anything, and I think that affected how they show up in their families a great deal.
Dear daughter.
My dear daughter.
To my dearest only daughter.
Azola Mzekandaba has a son and at any moment now is going to become a father to his first daughter. Since becoming a dad, he set up Black Dads Unplugged, a network of men trying to figure out this complex, lifelong role. Their motto? Active fatherhood is the new black.
I'm a husband to a beautiful lady whose name is Nogukanya, which means light. My son is Amanzi. We're very into names. His name means water.
You have a daughter on the way?
Yes.
Which is such exciting news. Congratulations.
Thank you.
I know in African culture, not so much in Kenya, but it does exist that we don't talk about babies before they come. On our end, we talk about evil eye. I don't know, is it the same in South Africa?
I'd say it's the same because traditionally no one speaks about the baby, just as a way of protecting the baby. And my side, I was born in the early 90s, which was essentially a tipping point for South Africa, just given our history and legacy. And people didn't talk openly about feelings. Our parents, I think, also didn't have the tools. The main thing was really just to survive. They didn't always dream out loud. But with us as a new generation, I do think we are doing things differently. And we are definitely celebrating the little daughter that is coming. So we have had quite a number of celebrations awaiting her. And it can happen any day. So I'm on speed dial right now.
Oh my goodness. Well, let's keep it moving then. And tell me about your thoughts on fatherhood. What's your view of the way you want to be a dad?
Sure, that's a challenging question. But how I want to be a dad is a dad that is not only present there, but active. Sometimes I think you grow up in situations, and I know this from a lot of my friends, where they probably lived with their father, but there's just a physical embodiment of someone who's there, but there's no active fatherhood, So I'm 35 right now. My father has never asked me how I am, and I love my father, but there are things that I think are necessary for children to feel seen, for children to feel heard. So for me, I want to be a father who's active, who knows what their children are doing, but I just want to be a father who sets an example by what he does, how he shows up through his language, his body, his emotions, because I think the experience I've had with my son over the past 2.5 years has showed me that he mimics more than anything. So I really want to be a great example.
Let's hear this letter to your baby, and then we can talk a bit more about it.
Dear daughter, I'm writing this in the month before you arrive. There's music playing softly in the background, something soulful with a touch of old school kwaito, and the scent of boerewors is curling through the air. A few weeks ago, my friend surprised me with a NappyBraai. I walked into what I thought was a casual get-together, and suddenly I'm being handed a drink and told to suit up in an adult-sized nappy. Yep, a grown man in a nappy. It was funny and festive, but beneath the jokes and biltong, I felt this powerful, unshakable truth: you are coming, and everything is about to change. As I stood there being roasted by my friends, literally and figuratively, I was thinking about how we prepare for something as big as this, becoming a girl dad. I was born in 1990, right in the thick of South Africa trying to figure itself out. Everything was changing: politics, identity, possibility. It was a time of both hope and hesitation. My parents came from a world of silence and survival. You didn't talk much about the future, let alone celebrate it. You didn't plan baby showers, maternity shoots, and baby moons, or speak of the baby's name before they arrived. Joy had to be cautious because life was uncertain. So now for you, I'm imagining again. I'm letting myself dream big. That is what this letter is about. My act of imagination, a way of calling abundance into your life before you even take your first breath. I want the world you're born into to feel celebratory, expectant, full of possibility, full of you. That is why we have been celebrating your life through acts of love. Your mom had a baby shower with her closest friends where they made cakes together, each one a sweet blessing in your name. We took beautiful baby bump pictures in a beautifully curated studio so that one day when you look at them, you will know this: you were loved before you arrived. Having a daughter in today's South Africa feels different. It's not just about protecting you. It's about preparing you for joy, for leadership, for a life where you get to choose who you are without limits. The men I've met through Black Dads Unplugged have taught me that it's okay to be vulnerable, that vulnerability is strength, that we can raise our children with tenderness and truth, that what matters most is showing up fully, with open hearts and open minds, and yes, with imagination. So my darling girl, I want you to grow up believing in magic, in your voice, and in the beauty of dreaming wildly. I want you to know that even in a country still working through its past, there's space for something bold and joyful to grow, like you. I can't wait to meet you, to see who you become, to walk beside you as you imagine your own path into the world. With all the love I have, Baba.
That's beautiful, Azola. Thank you. First off, I think we must start with the NappyBraai. Can you tell me what it is exactly?
So a NappyBraai is essentially a braai in South Africa. Other countries call it a barbecue.
You had clothes on underneath the nappy, right? We're not talking full baby mode.
No, I definitely had clothes on because it was unexpected. It was just a bunch of guys, not a lot of us, under 10.
And do the guests bring something for you the way they would at a baby shower that, we tend to have as women? Do they bring diapers and gifts for the baby or not so much?
Yes, definitely. So my friends brought quite a number of nappies. But like for me, the gift of their time, the gift of their care, to know that they're thinking that my daughter is coming is the greatest gift, like to be in solidarity as brothers.
You know what I wanted to find out? This podcast is all about advice.
Yes.
How did you feel about the advice you received at your NappyBraai? Did you find it useful? Was there anything that you hadn't heard before?
Sure. The thing is with men, the advice usually comes with humor, and sometimes you need to read between the lines. But we talked about how much we don't know and how much we want to get right. I thought it was actually very moving because for me, it was the very first time where I was with my friends and the conversation was really about like us and growing, you know. And the advice was around how do you show up as a dad. And I think it was primarily from the guys who were already fathers. And they were like, the first step is just being there, which I think for me is very important because my first memory of my father was 7 years old, So for me, the advice was just be there, you'll figure it out as you go.
And you talked about your own dad.
Mm-hmm.
How has becoming a parent after you had your first child, your son, how did that make you feel about your childhood?
Yeah. So how it made me feel about my childhood is thinking that I want to parent differently, you know, and it's something I'm deeply committed to. My wife and I have been intentional about celebrating, our daughter as she's coming. And for me, I feel like I was brought up in a house filled with love, primarily my mom being the conduit of that love. I wanted to just know how my dad is like, to see him. And all I ever wanted was to be seen by my father. And so I go about my way to recognize my son, and as I go on in the parenting journey, it will be also to recognize my daughter. So I want to affirm my children, I want them to know that they are unconditionally loved.
My daughter, Coco, used to love this song when she was 2 or 3 years old by Questa. And we have videos of her dancing. And when I looked up what the song means, as far as I understood, it's about the spirit of being South African and what it is like to be a South African. Tell me about what you feel it's like to be a South African, what the spirit of South Africa is.
So I'm a big advocate for South Africa and Africa in general. I think the spirit in South Africa is one that is very joyful, very loud. People are quite friendly. It's colorful. It's bursting with possibility. There are so many things to be positive about. There are a plethora of opportunities.
Tell me what it was like being a child in the 90s, growing up in the 90s, and you were born actually right at the beginning of it all, beginning that journey of post-apartheid. And could you briefly explain to anyone who might not be familiar what apartheid was?
Okay, so apartheid, sure. How do I describe it? So apartheid, for people who don't know, was essentially institutionalizing racial segregation and discrimination that existed in South Africa, primarily between whites and blacks. It's discrimination, inability to do certain things, inability to walk freely. So movement was determined by the state for people of color. So anyone who is not fully white was discriminated against.
When I think about colonialism and segregation and apartheid. And I think about what was happening to people who look like me for years. It is a true life horror. It is a horror film that happened. And I wonder how something like what happened in South Africa, how it impacts your uncles and your dad and your cousins, how it impacts their fatherhood, their views on fatherhood and how they behave as fathers.
I truly do think it impacts the males quite significantly. There was a sense of, number one, separation of the black man from his family. So we had what is called labor sending areas. So with mining, what happened is they'd remove the males from their households and they'd come to areas like Carltonville, Johannesburg to mine gold, and the families would remain in the rural areas. So that would separate the black father from his family. And also what this also has done is that there's another element of just apartheid and being seen as subhuman that emasculates you as a man. There was part of the apartheid regime is that if you saw a young child or who happens to be white, you have to call them klein baas, which is little boss. And, there's an element of taking out manhood and masculinity from the black man, which I think informed how the dads also showed up in their families, because in all other instances, they weren't seen as, men, they weren't seen as leaders, they weren't seen as anything, and I think that affected how they show up in their families a great deal.
And then how did it affect their children, their sons?
Yeah, so I think what then happens is the sons don't get a father, essentially. Yeah, you get a shell, you get a shell which is trying to survive. From my observations is that it made the men violent themselves and did not allow them to be soft, to be caring. It was all about how can I survive in this type of atmosphere.
How do you see that impact of having a present father, an active father, a father who shows up?
I've come to a powerful realization that many of the societal challenges we face today stem from one deeply rooted issue, which is fatherlessness. I came up with a project called Black Dads Unplugged, which is here to inspire a new narrative. It came from a deep need for connection and honesty. It's a space where Black fathers from all walks of life come together to share, to reflect, and support one another. We talk about real stuff: fears, failures, mental health, healing, legacy. It's definitely not therapy, but it's therapeutic. For me, it's been life-changing. It's reminded me that I'm not alone. And my mission is to amplify the voices of Black fathers in the parenting narrative. I think we are living in a time where only the negative is being spoken about. And I know a lot of young fathers who are showing up so beautifully, so honestly, and willing to learn and willing to grow. And that's the story that I want to tell,
Active fatherhood is the new black.
Yes.
I'm going to need that t-shirt, Azola.
I can send it to you. I can send it to you.
And what about advice that you've had or received from other dads in the Black Dads Unplugged?
I think one of the greatest things that has happened to me is being in the labor room when my wife was giving birth to our first child. That changed my thinking around birth, around women, mothers. I felt something so divine happening in that room, and it just, because as a dad, you never feel like a dad until the child is here, because the child is growing in the mother. And that moment of being in that labor room, and I'm someone who's afraid of blood, but somehow I got some strength, and that just is the best moment of my life. I truly believe if fathers are in the birthing room, it will increase the likelihood of fathers remaining present and active in their children's lives. Just be there, be there to tell a different story, to inspire a new narrative, around parenting. I think all things follow once you're fully there, fully active, and fully present.
That sound advice. Thank you so much, Azola. I actually do have one more question. At the beginning of our conversation, you told me that you were quite a high achiever because you felt you had a dad-sized hole in your heart, basically. But
Yeah.
How do you then work on being vulnerable?
I grew up, and like most men, you are continuously told, ngesiZulu, it's like indoda ayikhali, which means a man doesn't cry, So you are closed off to the full spectrum of human emotion, which I think is just such a disservice, and we start showing up, trying to be hard, in situations where you can just be free. I think there's a freedom in vulnerability. There's a freedom in being able to say, listen, you hurt me when you did this, which is a conversation I've also had with my dad, to say, this is how you made me feel. And I think that's what the letter to my daughter is about. It's not just a message. It's a mirror of what I'm building. It's my way of telling her, before you were born, you were already loved out loud.
This is such a special thing that you've done, speaking as a daughter to a dad. And just with the generation I was raised in, where we didn't have these conversations at the time and we're having them later on in life. To have that, to have a letter, first of all, because I love letters, but to have it and
Yeah.
to kind of to be able to hear what your dad was thinking before you were born, and then to continue to have these amazing conversations as she grows up is such a huge gift. And speaking of gifts,
Hey Namulanta, I have wonderful news to share. Our beautiful baby girl, Inala, meaning abundance in isiZulu, made her grand entrance into the world. Inala has these adorable deep dimples that just melt my heart, exactly like her mom. We're absolutely over the moon and can't wait for everyone to meet her. Thank you for letting me share these news, the special moments with the Dear Daughter listeners.
next week on Dear Daughter, I'll be talking to Anise about hormones and the power they may or may not have over us.
I want to help all women who haven't yet gone through menopause and all of my daughter's generation to understand that it's not all negative, and I want that generation to be empowered, not fearful.
And remember, I'd love to hear from you too. If you've got a letter with advice or a story to share with your daughter, or with your younger self, or with daughters everywhere, you can send it to deardaughter@bbc.co.uk, or you can go to our website at www.bbcworldservice.com/deardaughter. Or you can send us a WhatsApp message on +44 800 030 4404. And please spread the word. Tell everyone you know about Dear Daughter. Show them where to find it, how to download it, and how to follow or subscribe. And leave us a review. wherever you get your podcasts. Dear Daughter is presented by me, Namulanta Kombo, and produced by me and Claire Bowes with support from Maggie Karanja. The series producer is Lucy Burns. The editor is Claire Fordham. Mixed by Gareth Jones. Theme music composed by Justin Nichols. Hattie Nash is the BBC World Service podcast producer, and John Manell is the podcast commissioning editor. See you next time.